بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. Now inshallah, in this last section of the introduction to Balagha, I want to run through with you the major works in Balagha. So we've discussed last time how Balagha, the science developed. It developed on the sides of Ilm al-Qalam, it developed on the side of Ilm al-Lugha, it developed on the side of, on the side of Hamish, the Hashia, the footnotes of Aqidah, Tafsir and Lugha. But what are the major works, whether it was a mustaqil, independent work, or whether it was a side note? How did these develop? So the first one I said, one of the main works was the Majaz al-Quran of Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah Ma'mar ibn al-Muthanna. Now in here he's got Majaz al-Quran, but again I said you have to keep in mind that this book was written in 202 Hijri. So that time the science was not developed as it is today in front of us. So for example, one thing to keep, this book, if you read, you have to keep some things in mind. Now when he says Majazul Quran, when he says Majaz, he means Majaz by, so he does use Majaz sometimes to mean what we call Majaz. But to him, remember the story, that the person didn't know why you would say, Tal'ahu ka'annu ru'usu shayateen. So for him when he says Majazu, he means the meaning. So for example, if there's a word which is not apparent, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, you know what that means? But if there's any word, any sentence where the meaning is not apparent, let's say for example, وَاسْأَلِ الْقَرْيَةِ, ask the village. So a non-Arab would say, well, he learned Arabic literally thinking, how can you ask a village? So he said, Majazu dharik, the Majaz of this is, وَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الْقَرْيَةِ. So he explained the meaning. But Majaz in his terminology does not mean the Majaz that we call our terminology. Majaz was not developed to this terminology as yet. So when he says Majaz, he doesn't mean that. So when he says Kinaya, he doesn't mean Kinaya, what we call Kinaya. He had to use Kinaya sometimes more to use pronouns. So a pronoun, he said pronoun is a kinaya, meaning the zamir who is referring to this. Because obviously the word kinaya, when he says tashbih, he says tashbih, tamthil, mathal. All of this means what? Tashbih according to him. Because these terminologies have not yet been laid down. But anyway, this is one of the first major works. Then later on, earlier than him was Saybawayh. Now again, I said to you, Imam Saybawayh, he's a Nahwi. But as I said, Balagha developed also on the side notes of Nahwa. Because Ilm al-Ma'ani is a lot of Nahwa. So in Imam Saybawayh rahimahullah, his book, Al-Kitab, it's called Al-Kitab, this is the book. And it's one of the main sources of Nahwa. So in here, on the notes, like when he discusses different things, he will mention the Ma'ani. Not only Arab, why is it marfu, like how we do Qatun Nada or Ajrumiya or Hidayat al-Nahwa, Kafiya. He doesn't discuss, Fa'al is marfu and in is Jazima, Ghai Jazima. Along with that, he mentions the Ma'ani. Okay? So he mentions a lot of Balagha points, what developed Ilm al-Ma'ani later on in his book, Al-Kitab. Okay? So, though it's not a primary source of Balagha, many points which were later taken by the Ahlul Balagha later on came from the Saybawayh's notes, on Saybawayh's book, Al-Kitab. Okay? Achha. Later on we had someone called Jahid. He wrote a book called Bayan wa Tabyin. So basically what he done is, he collected loads of, again this is a book of literature. He collected loads of poetry, paragraphs, people's sayings. And in there, again, I said to you, Balagha developed when people did naqt of the kalam. So in this literature, when he mentioned all of these people's poems, etc., and spoke about it, mentioned different people's opinion regarding it, in there you get a lot of fawaid of the Balagha. So you won't find Ilm al-Bayan, Ilm al-Ma'ani, you won't find any of this. You just find this guy's poetry, this guy's letter, this guy's reply, this guy's Nathar, this guy's Qasida, this guy's Fulan. And then on it, people have notes, commentaries, tabsira, criticism, analysis. And within there, you find lots of information. But obviously, if you read Al-Bayan or Tabyin, you're not going to find anything the way you wanted to find. You find bits and bobs here and there. So you have to do exhaustive reading. And even he himself, people have mentioned, even he himself has mentioned, like, his tartib, he knows not that good. He just, more of an encyclopedia or a collection, rather than a critical, rather than a laid out, easy to use format. But again, this job has been done for us. We don't. People later on took his book, read his book, analyzed it, and took out points from there. Yeah. Similarly, there's another book called Kitab Asana, and the Sana is Kitaba wa Shi'r. Abu Hilal Askari. Again, it's not a book on Balagha. He analyzed writing and poetry, and in there he mentions many points within this book, which later became sources and points and people took out when they formed the science of Balagha. So this Abu Hilal Askari, passed away 395 Hijri, his book is also one of the famous books which helped the development of Balagha. But it's not a book on Balagha itself, it's actually a book on these two sciences. But within there you find lots of Balagha. Okay? Acha. Now, one of the main works that came on later on was Abdul Qadir al-Churjani. So he's one of the great scholars in terms of the ulum al-Quran, of the ulum, miftah al-ulum, meaning that the key sciences. He did a lot of work in Nahwa. He's got a book in Nahwa. He's got books, the Mi'atu Awamil. That's his Jurjani's. He's done a Shara and Tasrif of Izzi. So he's done a Shara on that. So a lot of these kind. And then in Ilm al-Balagah. But see, the thing is, I said to you before, that Ilm al-Balagah was known as what before? Ilm al-Ijaz. So Ilm al-Balagha, we call it Ilm al-Balagha. But initially, it wasn't called Ilm al-Balagha. It became Balagha later on. Initially it was what? Ilm al-Ijaz. Dala'il al-Ijaz. Why? The science which shows us the miraculous nature of the Quran. That's what it was. So when you say a book about Ijaz, Ijaz means what? Balagha. What we call Balagha. But they call it Ijaz, meaning how do you study the Quran to understand that it is mu'jiz, it is a mu'jiza, it is miraculous, it is unmatchable. So that's why he says Dala'il al-Ijaz. Now in Dala'il al-Ijaz, he mentioned more of the Ilm al-Ma'ani stuff. He didn't call it Ilm al-Ma'ani, but when we look at it, most of the stuff he talked about the ma'ani, the meaning of the word, tartib, he discussed taqdeem, bay, and different things more to do with ilm al-ma'ani. He's got another book called Asrar al-Balagah, more to do with bayan. And then there he's got more ilm al-bayan stuff. But again, it's not called ilm al-bayan, the terminology is not the same, but these two books were one of the main sources that people used. And he was one of the pioneers of this field. Okay? Right. Then Abdullah Mu'taz, he came quite early. These two scholars here, they've done a lot of work on Ilm al-Badi'. He actually named it Badi'. People say he's one who called it Ilm al-Badi'. So he's got a book called Al-Badi'. Abdullah ibn Mu'taz, he's passed away in 296 Hijri. So he's earlier than the previous one, but he did work a lot on Badi'. And he's one that started initiating these terminologies of Badi'. But obviously his was quite less. Qudama ibn Ja'far came later on, he added on a few more. And he was not too long after him, about 30 years after him, 30, 40 years after him. And he wrote a book called Naql al-Sha'r. Again, poetry. But when he did an analysis and criticism of the poetry, within there he mentioned many notes of Badi'. So these are two of the pioneers of the Ilm al-Badi'. Okay? So, yeah? Achha. Right. Now, then what happens now from here is where people kind of become a unanimity upon terminologies and upon certain things. So what happens? Abu Ya'qub as-Sakkaki. He wrote a book called Miftah al-Ulum. Now before I go into his book, this is what we need to understand about our darulooms and our madrasas and also how we study. Now, what's it called Miftah al-Ulum? What's Miftah al-Ulum mean? Key to sciences, key to knowledges. Now what's this book about? If you look at it here, because key to means what? That is knowledge, and this book is the key to those knowledges. So when he says ulum, it means what? All other sciences. And what are these key sciences? He's discussed it into, got 3 qisams and 2 other little parts at the end. Ilm al-Sarf, Ilm al-Nahwa, Ilm al-Bayan and Ilm al-Ma'ani, Ilm al-Istidlal min mantiq, logic, and Ilm al-Shi'r. So they consider these even long before the Dars al-Nizami and the Dars al-Nizami system, is that these are the Miftah al-Ulum. If you know your Nahwa, you know your Sarf, and in English, you'll call all of this what? Nahwa, grammar. Grammar. This is rhetoric. And this is logic. And what's this called in English? Remember I told you a long time ago? It's called the trivium. Right? The 3 liberal sciences. So Miftahul Ulum, liberal science, whatever. He said these sciences, they said that these are the keys to that. If you got these, then you can go to any of the other sciences later on. Because you understand the sentences, you understand the rhetoric of the non-literal meanings. You also have ilm al-istidlal, logic, mantiq, so you can see, well, what he's saying, does it make sense? Does the argument really make sense? Is it adding up? So this is why you have the miftah. That's why in all the madaris, unfortunately, logic is people that mantiq, switch off. And they just give it a bad name. But really, these are the very 3 important sides. Even this is almost like nobody does anymore, ilm al-Shi'r. And ilm al-Shi'r is quite important because it has its importance. Because if you understand Shi'r, you can understand how the Quran has outdone the Shi'r. And also you understand the patterns of the Shi'r and how the Ash'ar works. There's also something that people study in classical things. So these are the main, that's what we call Miftah al-Ulum. He called these the liberal sciences, the key sciences. You study these properly, then you have the tools to go on further. And what happened, unfortunately nowadays, nobody wants to do this, everybody wants to go on to Quduri, Nur al-Izah, Quran, Tafsir, Jalalain, Mishkat. Fine, those are the fun subjects. But if you want to become proper, you have to have analysis, you have to analyze everything. You need to have these ulum. If you don't have these ulum, what will happen? You will be bound by what your teacher told you. So they give you this on Quran. You just make notes of it and that's it. How are you gonna go and say, well, if you don't understand Tarkib, how are you gonna find it? Because you don't understand the Arabic, so you can't go into an Arabic book, Arabic tafsir, and see how they done the Arab, how they done the parsing of the sentence. If you don't know the Balagah, you can't understand. You can only whoever teacher told you that, you can't go in and see. So even in fiqh, even in usul fiqh, if you don't have mantiq, you don't understand the logic, you won't understand how they're actually arguing, how they're making their principles. So all of these sides are very, very important. So students must make sure they should really focus on these. I know it's not as many people don't find it as fun as the other subjects, and obviously those should be more fun. The Hadith of Quran, why should not be more fun? Correct. But this due care must be given to this, because if you have these, then you are liberated. You have the miftah of all the ulum. So anyway, that was a sidetrack. So we're saying he wrote a book called Miftahul Ulum, and in here what he discussed in Qism al-Thalith fi ilmi al-bayani wal-ma'ani, bayani wal-bayan. And this is from there. Then what happened? This became one of the standard texts. But it's not standard, people don't use it that much. From here, the next book that came about was this one. Khatib Khazwini, what's this book here? Miftahul Ulum. So Khatib Khazwini, he wrote a book called Talkhis al-Miftah, Miftahul Ulum. He had Talkhis, a shortening abbreviation of which section? Of the Balagah section. So Talkhis al-Miftah is actually, so you have Miftahul Ulum of Sakaki, and Khatib Qazwini, he wrote the abbreviation, a very short version. And this is one of the more classical texts. So really, Durus al-Balagah is not really, as I said in the first lesson, it's not really a classical text. So more ideally, we should be studying Talkhis. Because why? It gives you more access. Because if you study Durus al-Balagah, there are a few shuruhat on it. There's Shamus al-Bara'a, there's Shaykh Uthaymin rahimahullah, just an ashara on it. People Urdu shuruhat, but those are not of the high. So if you really want to study, or you really want to teach properly, this is what you should be teaching Talkhis. We've done the Durus al-Balagah, we've finished Durus al-Balagah now. But Talkhis al-Miftah, that's one of the main standard texts. And along with that, because why? It has many shuruhat on it, lots of shuruhat. So that's why you can get a lot more information, a lot more mutala. So if you want to further read it on your own, do Talkhis. And inshallah, later on we'll teach it as well, inshallah. So Talkhis al-Miftah. This is what Ma'ani, he done that. And then along with this, he wrote a book called Idah. He wrote his own sharah on the Talkhis. So Al-Idah on the sharah of Talkhis al-Miftah. Correct? Yeah? So he did an abbreviation of the Miftah al-Ulum, that section, not the whole Miftah al-Ulum, that Balagah section. And he wrote Talkhis al-Miftah, and he wrote his notes on that. Now, whilst we're here, somebody was asking that why do other people bother writing a sharah? For example, here later on, Sa'duddin Taftazani, he wrote a sharah on the Talkhis. People say, why do you need to write a sharah on Talkhis when the author already has a whole sharah? It's very obvious, because if I say, okay, let me write a sharah on my book, am I going to put up my own mistakes? Well, I know my own mistakes. What things I missed, what things I overlooked, what things I erred in. So when the reason other people write a sharah of a book which already been commentated on by the author himself is because, so well, here you commented, you explain what you meant. We know what you meant. So you've explained it, so now we understand that. But the mistakes you have made, the errors you have put in, the things you haven't done correctly, what you've missed out, what you've erred, you're not going to find those, are you? That's why people write sharah, even though there's already a sharah of the Musannif. So anyways, so this Talkhis al-Miftah became center, and everything was based around it basically. And then Sa'duddin Taftazani, he came about 50 years after Khatib Qazwini. He wrote two books. One was, he wrote this one first, Al-Sharh al-Mutawwal ala Talkhis al-Miftah, meaning the Mutawwal, the lengthy commentary on the Talkhis. Okay? So Al-Sharh al-Mutawwal. Now again, we have these, prejudices and presumptions. I say, Talkhis difficult. It's not difficult. If you can read it, it's not difficult. The Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani, it's not difficult. The shuruh, if you understand, if you study properly, the correct way, nothing's difficult. So anyways, so he wrote a commentary first. This is what he wrote first. This is a long commentary on Talkhis. Okay? And then after that, he did an abbreviation called Al-Sharh al-Mukhtasar ala Talkhis al-Miftah. The brief commentary on the Talkhis al-Miftah, and this is what we commonly know now as Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani. So the Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani is a brief commentary of Talkhis al-Miftah. And Talkhis al-Miftah is an abbreviation of Sakaki's Miftah al-Ulum. Do you understand? Yeah? Yeah? Now, as I said to you, these books may seem hard, but again, you have to remember that nothing is hard if you study it properly. There's a way of studying. So when you study any science, again here, what you need to do, study a primer. If you're going to study Mutawwal at the beginning, you're going to be lost. If you're going to try to study talkhis at the beginning, you may find struggle. So what you do, that's why you have other books, not classical book. Like for example, you have many small books. You have, I'll mention later inshallah. So if you study, what happens basically, you have a primer. And that can be any language. For example, normally what happens, if you look in India, now there's an Nizami, a lot of the Urdu books, you have ilm sarf, ilm nahwa, asan stuff. The purpose of it is the primers. That you study the science in your own mother tongue to understand it first. Then you have a basic text. You got a basic text, a normal standard text. Then on that you do higher level. You following? So what will happen ideally? Ideally, you study what? Talkhis. Or we've gone even so weak, we have a primer of a primer. That's why we then what? First step to understanding Balagah, our English book. And after Talkhis you do what? You can do Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani. And the advanced you can do Mutawwal. And there are also other shuruhat. You have the Suq al-Shara, you have Tajreed, you have a few other shuruhat on Talkhis and Mukhtasar al-Ma'ani as well. Again, all sciences. In Sarf, you can say, well, we do the book in English, learn all the tasrifat, then do Tasrif al-Izzi, a normal basic book. Then from there you can do the Alfiyah ibn Malik and the Qism al-Fa'il. So all these books, a primer, you get the basic terminologies. And when you send that basic primer, don't worry about too much details, just get the basic concepts. When those are in your mind, then you go a bit, analyze one basic text, so you understand, okay, the language of the science, the language of the ulama of that science, etc., etc. And then you can go into other more detailed books. So normally it's a three-prong or three-level study. Now how do you study all these books? If you just jump to say, well, let's get Taftazani, you'll be shocked. You won't understand what's going on. Like for example, if you study now, you understand Tawriyah. Right? You study Tawriyah, you study Iham, there's Tawji. And then you go into Talkhis, you well, know what? He has named it different to Balagah. Those Balagah, the way he's did the taqsim of Tawji, Tawriyah and Iham, or Ibham, or even Iham. Why is it called Iham? Why is it called Ibham? Is it the same thing? Is it different? You got founding. You got to start analyzing it. And then you get confused on one of those, you can go into these books and say, well, what have they said about it? Okay, this Balagah has not got the right structure. They've actually something different to what it's said. You can analyze. But if you go in order, if you jump to the ending part first, you're going to be lost. So go in order. And all sciences, this is an example of one science. In all sciences, you need to go in a particular order. Do a primer, and ideally within your own language, your mother tongue. And then you do a basic text in that language. So for example, the Ajrumiyya was basically this, the primer. For kids will do Ajrumiyya because it's very easy. But in Arabic, you don't know Arabic. That's why we have all these Nahwa books in English and Urdu and all the other languages to understand it first. Then you go into a basic text, will be what? Hidayat al-Nahwa or Qatun Nada. And then once that's finished, you go into Kafiyah or the Alfiyah, etc. In all sciences, even Usul al-Fiqh, Usul al-Hadith, same thing. Okay, so back to the main thing here. So if you have a quick analysis again, so let's study from pre-Islam all the way to 800 Hijri. What were the main works? There was no works in the first 100 years. Later towards the last part of the 2nd century, what happened now? You get the Majaz al-Quran of Abu Ubaidah and Imam Saybawayh's his Kitab. There were two works that came out. Again, not directly in Balagah, but they helped Balagah section. Then after that, between 201 and 300, you have Badi' by Ibn al-Mu'taz and the Bayan al-Tabyin of Jahiz. Again, this was specific to one science of Balagah. This did not have Balagah on its own. Then later on, you have Kitab Asana and Naqd al-Shi'r. Again, none of these two, they were developed later on. They weren't Balagah specifically. They were commentaries, analysis of poetry and literature, but they helped the development of Balagah. Then here is what, between 401 and 500, in that century, 5th century, we have the Dalail al-Ijaz and Asrar al-Balagha of Abdul Qadir al-Jurjani rahimahullah. And that's where things started taking shape. And in 700, between 600 and 700, 7th century, you have Abu Ayyub Sakkaki rahimahullah. And his Miftah al-Ulum became the cornerstone. And then from there onwards, you got the Talkhis, you got the Mukhtasar, you got the Mutawwal. And then after, you get many contemporary books as well. Now contemporarily, this is one called Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon. Now, somebody was watching one of our Durus Balagah videos. He told me that he was memorizing by heart. I didn't say anything at the time, but again, if you want to memorize something, it's very good. But no which book to memorize. Durus Balagah is not a text. If you want to memorize something, it makes more sense memorizing Talkhis. And more than that, better is if you memorize this, Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon. If you've got the ability and you want to memorize it, this is a good one to memorize. It's short, it's a poem. And this is, I think, a lot of the Maghribi scholars, Moroccan and those kind of people, they use this one. It's Abdurrahman. These are all contemporary, meaning within the last 100, 200 years. So he's got Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon. This is a very short, and a lot of them use this. Because again, as I said, you don't need a long, big book. You need a good teacher. So if you've got a small text, teacher explains to you, understand it, memorize that text. And that's how the Arabs learn. A lot of them learn. To us, we're not really familiar with poetry, or I'm not familiar with poetry, so we prefer charts, tables, mnemonics, that kind of stuff. But they would just learn poetry. And from the poetry, they would memorize all the rules. So that's one way of doing it. If that suits a person, he can do Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon. Sheikh Sayyid al-Kamli from Morocco, he's got a whole dawra on it, about 10 or so videos on the Shara, it's called Shara Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon. Okay, so you can watch that if you want. So again, you will understand it now once you've done the Durus al-Balagah and other videos. Suyuti rahimahullah has also got a poem, a nazm, but it's very long. Some people, I've read it myself, but some people say it's almost like tatweel and they're too long. So the purpose of a nazm is to memorize and make it short. It's just too long. But that's the opinion. It could maybe useful. That's one person's opinion. But this is the most common one, Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon. Another contemporary book that's quite famous is Ulum al-Balagah. I don't know how famous it is, but a lot of people quote him. Even people who come after him, they quote him. So it's also interesting book to get Ulum al-Balagah. Fadl Hassan Abbas, he's only passed away recently, rahimahullah. He's written a book called Al-Balagah, Fununuha wa Afnanuha. The amazing thing about him was he was blind. He was born blind. I'm not sure he was born blind. I mean, I heard this from the person in the bookshop, who the printers. He was born blind or he was blind. So all of his knowledge he learned via the sama. People reading to him, listening to durus. And he became a master himself. And later on, his daughter was also a lot of zeal for Quran and Balagah and that kind of stuff. So she used to work with him. She then actually started becoming his, she used to scribe basically. She was a scribe. And she's also now, and then if you look at it recently, the same maktaba, they'll have some books. I think her name is Intisara, I can't remember exactly. But Bint Fazl Hassan Abbas. And she's also a mudarris in one of the jamiats in Syria or Baghdad or one of those places. I'm not sure. In the Middle East. I think it's Syria, maybe Syria. Okay? So his books are quite good. He's got a book called Balagah, Fununuha wa Afnanuha. It's two separate, 2 volumes. And he passed away. He was going for Umrah. On the way to Umrah, he passed away. This is also very good. This is very comprehensive. This Balagah. Al-Balagah al-Arabiyya, Ususuha wa Ulumuha wa Fununuha. Very comprehensive. It's got a lot of stuff. It's got almost everything. And he's not only done Jama', but he's also, certain places put some very good opinions and clarified a few things that were very confusing. So it's also a very good book to have. I recommend this. It's very long. 2 volumes, quite long. This is very short. This is also quite good. And again, Durus al-Balagah, Al-Balagah al-Wadhiha, that was written last century or 2 in Egypt to make Balagah easy as textbooks for schools. They're not, again, classical texts. We finished Durus al-Balagah, alhamdulillah, but again, not classical texts, it's like school books. So for example, the scholars like of Mauritania and those people who study classically, they don't do Durus al-Balagah. They will probably do Al-Jawhar al-Maknoon as a primer, then they will probably do Talkhis, then Muqtasar al-Ma'ani and Mutawwal, etc. They won't even start on this one. Because what happens in these kind of books where you have a lot of commentary, it takes too long to do. You have to explain them. So they want something brief. I like basically that. This is the text, you memorize the text and the teacher will explain to you. So you want brief, short text. And in Durus al-Balagah, it goes on quite long, he explains it. So that's the experience, it's not supposed to happen. It happens in the hasha, the footnotes, everything. You want a short, brief text. So for that, ideally, Talkhis is the best. But if you want lots of information, these 2 are quite good. I would recommend these 2 for further reading. Okay? Right? Any other questions? Yeah. Also, along with this, for other further reading, it's not a book about Balagah exactly, but Sheikh Fazil al-Samarai, rahimahullah, he's got a book called An-Nahwu Ma'anin. Sorry, Ma'anin. Nahwu Ma'anin wa Ahkam. Again, that covers a lot of the Ilm Ma'ani section. And he's also got a book called Ma'ani Nahwa. Ma'ani Nahwa. Again, that covers a lot of the Ilm Ma'ani section. He discusses Nahwa, but more of a Ma'ani perspective. And any of his books you get, even from his son's books, he's got a lot of books where he covers a lot of the Balagah section. So that's quite useful as a secondary read. Once you've done the main section, main Balagah stuff, his books are quite good. Fazil Samarai. And his son, I think, is Muhammad Fazil Samarai. So if you get any of those books, it's also a good read. It has lots of good information in it. And after that, I've given him Miftahul Ulum for Balagah. Now you can go and study on your own, inshallah. Any questions regarding this? So this is the style, the development, the books. We've done 2 books now. We've done first steps to understanding Balagah, and we're going to do Balagah. So now, from there, any more research you want to do, you can go into the Quran, look in the notes. If you want examples, for example, you can go into. But there are lots of books, Quran. But Sheikh Saburi, rahimahullah, he's got a book called what's the tafsir called? Safat al-Tafasir. Safat al-Tafasir. So what happens with these books that they actually have a section called Balagah. If you got Ibn Ashur, even Tabari, he's got Balagah. But he say, oh, Balagah, A, B, C, D. So for Tafasir, he's got Arab, Ma'ani, Balagah. So you got to say, oh, what Balagah is in here? Similarly, Shaykh Wahba Zuhaili, rahimahullah, he's got his Tafsir al-Munir. He's got his Tafsir al-Munir. Again, he's got the Balagah section in there. So that's also a good read to help in, and then you have Al-Jadwal fi Bayan I'rab al-Quran. And he's also got Balagah section. Not as comprehensive as Tafsir al-Munir. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, and again, you find Balagah again in Zamakhsharis, you'll find it in Ruh al-Ma'ani, you'll find it in Tahrir al-Tanwir, but they won't be actual sections that you have to read the whole tafsir. It's like part of the whole commentary, not a separate section. So that's about it. Any other questions you can ask, you can leave in the comments. You could, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept and make it easy for everybody. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ta'ala ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina maulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.